Hello, everybody. It's your weather woman, meteorologist Amy Metz, and today there are a ton of storms to cover. Right here where I am, it's February 2nd, 2022. So we have 2/2/22 today, and way more storms than that. We have a very strong cyclone that has now got a defined eye wall we'll talk about, another batch of storms right behind that. Madagascar and South Africa were just hit last week, so here comes a round two and possibly three after that. There's been a batch of storms over northwest Australia for quite some time. I'm curious about flooding there now as well. And then a low pressure system, which has now become a tropical depression, number 9, out next to Vanuatu that should be heading toward New Caledonia, and then another invest area far to the east. There's even been a batch of storms almost to invest category near Hawaii that just keeps on circulating for the last week and a half. So a lot on the map. This is the height of hurricane season or cyclone season for that area. I also want to touch on a geomagnetic storm that's coming. It says here at the Space Weather Prediction Center, there is a good chance we'll have geomagnetic storming, which is something I shared about in my last live stream. If you want to look at my page for any more information on that, you can. The big thing I'll point out for these storms is that it increases lightning a lot. And I also mentioned last week about the cloud condensation nuclei that it can develop. So as that burst left the sun, well, here, let me show you since I'm going to keep talking about this for a minute. As this plasma was leaving the sun, there's a satellite in space that is keeping watch on the sun. And so you see these kind of bursts. And last week there was a bigger one that I showed on my previous live stream. So it did what we call a halo CME, where you saw this kind of a bright light all the way around. This particular batch of plasma, because they follow magnetic field lines, probably won't come toward Earth, but when they do come toward Earth and they enter our atmosphere, these particles can actually create more clouds. So there are some studies done on that, different proofs you can find that I share on my Facebook group called Space and Earth Weather. It's pretty new, but I've been on the forefront of figuring out how to dissect these things as they come. So sure enough, right afterward, all these storms appeared on the map. They just heightened it, and then more of this, more cloud cover. Cloud condensation nuclei is just particles that help create clouds. So here near Madagascar, we're seeing where I had been saying that this storm, on my Facebook page, I made a little arrow that was kind of going upward, and now it'll be curving back down a little bit to the southwest. There's a lot of oscillations that'll go on here where it kind of goes up and down a little. But looking at the strength of this, it's nothing to mess around with. You don't want to be caught in central Madagascar as this is making a landfall by Thursday. So Thursday, tomorrow, this part of the world, it should be more like Thursday night, Friday. So we'll get into those details in just a moment. As I'm working my other job, I've been very pretty busy, so I'm not tracking these quite as close as I used to. So I'm actually coming into this live stream with no updates for the last 24 hours on my part. So luckily, I was hoping these would stay a little bit further from these smaller islands, and it is staying just far enough away that there will be some torrential downpours and some stronger winds, but nothing like what's going to happen with the landfall here in Madagascar. So otherwise, the storms that I'll be talking about are right near Solomon Islands. Has been getting so much rain even in Vanuatu that there are low-lying areas now flooded. And looking at this satellite infrared, we're seeing really strong downpours where you see the dark, deep reds. So what I'll do is I'll pause it on the time right now. And for now is right here. And we can take a look here. Vanuatu on the southern portion is getting a little bit of a break right now. That's going to change. So while it's not raining, it would be a good time if you are in a low-lying area to maybe make some plans and get out, or if you're next to a way, let's say a place where the water drains to, or there's rivers, they could very easily be rising up in the next couple of days as this tropical depression here continues moving toward Vanuatu and New Caledonia. The good thing with that storm is that it won't be able to get very strong because of all that land in there, creates friction, things called wind shear, and it will keep the storm from getting very strong at the core. And then our other batch of storms was well to the east. So this one here, we're also watching and near Cook Islands. Right now, not a lot of rain and moisture with that, luckily. So, and it is also where the water temperatures are cooler. And on that note, sea surface temperatures are a big deal here with these kinds of storms. It has to be above 26.5 degrees Celsius to even be created. And you see that where that is orange is that kind of a temperature. So here where the depression is, it is nice and hot enough for these kind of storms to form, but all the land will stop it from becoming large. And then once it passes New Caledonia, it'll already take a hit with its wind speeds decreasing, but also that cooler water temperature there is going to make a big difference in it not being able to become strong afterward, even after it moves away from land. So Fiji will have extra rain. New Caledonia, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, all extra rain, but you don't really have to be worrying about a strong cyclone there the way that Madagascar does. So right now, the water temperatures have finally been heating up to where it's allowing these storms to get stronger, telling me that the next invest right behind that also has a good chance of growing strong. But before I go further with that, I will say we have to look at the wind shear on each one of these storms to also know if it's going to be able to get stronger or not. So wind shear values, when you see them in the greens here, it means that the wind is not very different from the surface up to the sky, high in the sky, where the top of the storm is. If it's green, that means this thing can circulate and get stronger. If it's red, that just means that as you move up in the air, wind's going different directions, and it keeps it from making a nice strong circle and eye wall. So around here is where this graphic was probably taken a little bit ago. This is probably just a couple hours old from the looks of it. And we're seeing that the wind speeds are 125 knots right now. This will probably go back and forth a little bit as it shows here. And then with the wind shear values, those hot sea surface temperatures, I want to say it could stay a little bit stronger, even a little longer. So we were looking at 180 kilometer per hour wind speeds at the point of a landfall. And that's going to be condensed to a very small region here in the center of this area. But with the storm surge, it's going to make kind of a danger zone all the way here where there are low-lying areas. So you're going to want to be up higher elevation, at least 15 feet above sea level in this case. What is that, about like 5 meters? So as the water is getting pushed into land, you don't end up sucked away at sea. It's better in this case to get onto the other side of the island, or maybe even the southern portion here, as this thing is making landfall. So be prepared for that in Madagascar, please. And then looking at the other storms here now, I'll jump to this one first because it does have the most populated regions, going in order here of strength and populations. So with this storm, as you see, it's still forecast to be a low. I would agree pretty well with this, and we'll get more into the direction in just a minute here. But as far as strength goes, it does have this posted as just staying as a low pressure, as I was assuming, and then going back down even lower with the wind speeds as it gets closer to land. Because as it spins and hits this land, it will get disorganized and not be able to become a strong cyclone just because of that reason, that it's going to interact with all this land, and probably wind shear as well. I do believe the wind shear was stronger here. And here we go. Yes, in fact, it is. So this is a great thing for everybody in New Caledonia that you have this much wind shear. I wasn't expecting it to be this high, but 30 knots of wind shear is a big deal. That means that it's changing quite a bit. That's kind of near the high end 40s, 50s, 60s very high. And so this is right in the middle there, and that's great news. That although there's raining and flooding in that area, it's not so bad when it comes to the development of this storm in the future. It won't be able to get very strong. Now, what's over Australia? This could very well cause a lot more raining. Now, let me look for Shear again. Oh, wow. Isn't that nice? So, yeah, I hadn't really been, I keep watching this area because there's been a lot of storms here for weeks. So I do know that, flash flooding will continue to be a problem, but it looks like there's really no way this thing could develop into a cyclone. So that's good news there. And something I want to go back to then is the direction of these other storms that are coming into play. And I was asked about Cook Islands specifically, and so I want to touch on that also. Should be, wish I had my longitude, latitude in here. That'll help me find it. But yeah, over in near Cook Islands, there's not a lot going on weather-wise. That invest is not going to be a bother. I can tell just looking at the satellite here. If this wants to form into anything more, it will get sucked down toward the south a bit, and then winds will also tell me that sort of thing, especially these mid-level winds that are like halfway up through the sky. Yeah, it's pulling some down already, some of that energy, and the wind is already being pulled there. So that's good news on that side. Does look like, there's another storm here forming, but that will be interacting with colder water and staying out at sea. So that's a good thing there. And with this tropical depression and where it will go, all the sources are pointing toward New Caledonia, kind of right between New Caledonia and Vanuatu. I don't see any reason to disagree with that. So the strongest gusts, would be over Vanuatu then, but not very strong. We're talking like maximum 50 kilometers per hour. I guess it could be up to 60 or so as this passes. And then Fiji will get some of the rain, but no big problems with wind gusts there. So the rain is already starting to reach Fiji there. This has been such a wet week, so I hope everybody is faring well with the floods. I posted some videos and pictures of these floods over on my Facebook page. So yeah, here's the other invest area where there are more torrential downpours. So hopefully people were able to dry out there. I think there was a little bit of a break on that part of Australia before this one came into the picture. And now I'll really focus on where this storm will go over Madagascar with, again, steering winds. So here we are halfway up through the atmosphere, and I do agree with where this is placing. Anything in white is over 100 miles per hour. That means about 180 kilometers per hour at the max there, because it's kind of like 120 miles per hour. Back to right now, which tells me more easily how to pinpoint the location of where the landfall will be. Zoom out a little for this. So these are called steering winds by meteorologists. We can look ahead of a storm and kind of get an idea of which direction it's going in by watching these streamlines. So it is definitely going to be heading mostly west. I see a lot of energy up in the northwestern portion, telling me, yes, it might even oscillate back down south a little bit as it's moving westward. So little bits of south and west in this forecast, and I don't see any reason to believe otherwise right now. So this forecast track, I think, is doing a really good job right now. The models are not always, I'm not always agreeing with them, but this one I definitely do. So central eastern Madagascar is what I was asking people to watch for. And this storm will be very strong and gusty as it passes through. In fact, just for completeness, I'll let this play out all the way before I pause it, because winds will decrease a little bit in intensity, but anywhere that you're seeing these blues, still a strong storm surge. White especially, this could be feet and feet of water coming in. That's why I was saying get to higher ground, especially in those areas. Now, with the wind gusts, these are still pretty strong, 75 miles per hour. Want to call that about 130 kilometers per hour. So anywhere in the southern portion of Madagascar, be aware that the winds will still be strong. And so as I was saying, if you need to evacuate or get to a higher ground, the very southern portion would be safer, or this northern side, depending on where you're able to get to, will make a difference in what's better option for you, but it will be windier on the southern side. And I was wondering if this storm would end up hitting South Africa again, just like the one before. I had called at the beginning that this was going to be a very similar path. As I get further out, I'm a little more curious if it will actually make a landfall in South Africa or end up going south before. You can see there's a little bit of energy here being pushed down toward the south. So this is almost a week away. It's very close call, knowing whether or not this other feature with what's called a ridge will come in and push the storm away and keep it away from South Africa, or if it will actually end up kind of intersecting land there. I'll have to do some thinking on that, and I'll update my products on Facebook as that comes. And so now that I'm far out in the model, let's take a look and see what it shows for this other part of the world. I'm going to go to wind gusts, which are usually more representative of these storms. And what I was just showing were the upper level winds, but that's very close to what I was believing the surface winds would be. So that's why I didn't change it. Now, we're not showing anything in the South Pacific still at that point as far as cyclones go. So this is good news. I could imagine that this would be the story here. A lot of flooding still, though, is going to be the problem. Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, and Fiji especially. So watch out for flash flooding as this storm gets closer to Fiji. But Vanuatu and Solomon Islands are the ones where the ground has been so soaked already. So I'll go ahead and check if there's any questions, and then I can be back on here. It is not the right time of day for this part of the world, so nothing showing up there. And if you want to go ahead onto my Facebook page, you can check out more information there, and you can follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/theworldofweather. This is where I post a lot of the updates, and we'll come and look at questions and answer them. So normally I will come in here and answer the questions that are on these posts specifically. But today I had just remembered what questions were there. So this is the one that I had put out for Madagascar, and it looks like that track is on track with what I was saying. And same wind speeds is what I'm still agreeing with. So I open up these comments normally in my live streams, and I will read the questions out loud and talk about them. So I just remembered what they were the other day. Here's Fiji. So sometimes these are coming in so fast that I have more during the live streams, but right now it's the same as I had earlier. So yes, thank you. This tropical cyclone goes directly to our country, and that I am sorry for, and I'm wishing you the best through this. So just be prepared. Evacuate if you need to. That's going to be the message for Madagascar, especially on these in the center where the winds will be the strongest, where the storm surge is strong. I'll zoom in really close again and just reiterate the evacuation areas that I would plan for if I were there. So here we go by Friday, and now Thursday I would think, sleeping overnight somewhere else wouldn't be a bad idea. This actually, though, is in the time slot for my part of the world, so I'm really about 12 hours behind. So if you want to think about these times right here, add 12 hours to make it local to Madagascar. So looking at Friday evening in that case is when the landfall will be. So get out of the way far in advance. Know that the seas will be rising anywhere you see the whites and the purple. And the winds are going to be the strongest right here in the middle. So I would evacuate this area, even if I were living in Managuri. I wish I knew how to say these words better, but if I were living there, I would also want to go to a friend's house, a family member's house, especially on the northern side. And then if you can't make it all the way there, this southern tip, especially the southeastern tip, is what I would suggest. So I wish everybody the best through this weather. It's time to just get prepared and make evacuation plans if needed, and realize as this wind moves up slopes and up the terrain, it will be even stronger, able to knock down trees onto houses, knock out power. So even if you think you might be safe riding it out, it just might not be worth it to be home if you're not going to have any power. So, best wishes once again, and I will be back with updates on my Facebook page by tomorrow.